After turning down a voluntary donation request for $5,000 from the neighborhood committee, I was reported for suspicious behavior so many times I was nearly evicted. My own uncle was part of it. I dug deep, found their fake documents and illegal use of funds, and turned it over to the state. Watching the entire HOA board get perp walked off my street was sweeter than any victory I could have imagined. I almost lost my home because I said no to my HOA's shady demand. They picked the wrong guy. I fought back, and I made sure they paid for every lie and every threat. Let me tell you how it happened. I live in a nice little subdivision outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. It's not fancy, but it's clean, quiet, and people used to wave when you walked by. I moved in 5 years ago. The place had an HOA, but they never really bothered me before. That all changed last year. One morning, I got a letter from the HOA neighborhood committee. It was thick and looked very official. The letter basically said they were asking me to make a $5,000 voluntary donation to help with upcoming community projects. No details. No list of projects. Just $5,000. I laughed and tossed the letter aside. 2 days later, my uncle, who I've always thought was decent, called me. He's a board member. He didn't even try to pretend it was optional. "Hey, you got the letter, right?" he said. "Yeah," I answered. "Not gonna happen." There was a long pause. "You should really reconsider," he said slowly. "You don't want people looking too hard at your property. Things can happen." That's when I knew. This wasn't a donation. It was extortion. Then the nightmare began. It started small. I got a notice that I had an unapproved garden gnome on my lawn. I don't own a garden gnome. Next week it was trash bins left out too long. I take my bins in the same day every time. Then came the excessive noise. Warnings. I live alone. I don't throw parties. I work from home. The final straw was when I got 3 notices in 1 week for suspicious activity. Someone reported me for lurking around my own property. Another said I was monitoring neighbors with binoculars. I don't even own binoculars. Every notice came with a $100 fine. I refused to pay. They warned me I was violating the HOA agreement and threatened legal action. I tried to speak at an HOA meeting, but they muted me on the call. My emails were lost or never received. They had full control. I was powerless. I started keeping detailed records. I photographed my property every day. I recorded conversations. I printed every letter and email. I knew I had to build a case. I dug into the HOA's finances. It wasn't easy. They ignored my requests for financial statements. So I started asking neighbors. A retired accountant down the street helped me. We compared yearly budgets and actual work done. Things didn't add up. A $12,000 landscaping project that no one saw happen. A $9,000 security upgrade with no new cameras or fences. Dozens of strange payments to companies that didn't seem to exist. I spent nights searching state business records. Some of those companies were fake. A few were real, but owned by relatives of HOA board members. The $5,000 donations were being pushed to launder money. They targeted people they thought wouldn't fight back. Mostly older neighbors, widows, immigrants. It made me sick. That's when I decided, I'm going to burn this whole corrupt operation to the ground. I put together a binder with everything, copies of fake violation notices, proof of harassment, fake invoices, shell company connections, and names of everyone on the board, including my uncle. I sent the entire package to the North Carolina Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice. 3 months later, I came home to unmarked cars lining our street. State investigators were walking in and out of the HOA office. They carried boxes of files and computers. My neighbors stood outside watching in silence. Then I saw it, my uncle, in handcuffs, being walked down the steps of the HOA building. His face was pale and he wouldn't look at anyone. After him came the HOA president, then the treasurer, then the secretary. They were all arrested. The charges? Fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, harassment, and filing false reports. People whispered. One elderly neighbor wiped tears from her eyes. I felt my knees go weak. I had done it. The entire board was exposed. After the arrests, I thought I could finally breathe. I was wrong. The neighborhood was split. Some people thanked me quietly. Others glared at me. The board still had loyal supporters, people who either didn't believe the charges or were too scared to admit they had been fooled. 2 days after the arrests, someone poured used motor oil all over my driveway. My mailbox was smashed. A neighbor I barely knew, Dave, who had always seemed friendly, stopped me as I was cleaning up. You happy now? He sneered. You tore this place apart. I stared at him. They stole from you too. He shook his head. They kept this place nice. You think the state's gonna care about us? I realized then, the corruption ran deep, and some people had been convinced that paying off crooks was better than risking change. The next HOA meeting was chaos. The state had installed an interim management company to take over, but the meeting was packed with angry residents. People argued, shouted over each other, some blaming me, others demanding to know how the fraud was allowed to go on so long. I sat quietly in the back. I wasn't there to gloat. I just wanted my home back. 3 weeks later, I got served. The family of the former HOA president filed a civil suit against me for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They claimed my lies had ruined their family. I was stunned. My uncle hadn't spoken to me since the day he was arrested, but I found out he had convinced them I had fabricated everything to get back at him over an old family argument. That was a lie. We never had any real fight until this. I hired a lawyer. Thankfully, my documentation was rock solid. My lawyer called it one of the most airtight cases he'd seen. Still, the process drained me. I lost sleep. I lost weight. I barely spoke to anyone at work. I just wanted this nightmare to end. During the lawsuit's discovery phase, my lawyer subpoenaed HOA records that hadn't been part of the criminal investigation. That's when we found something worse. My uncle had forged documents to try and seize my property. Months before, the board had drafted fake violation letters and sent them to the HOA's lawyer to start foreclosure proceedings against me. They planned to take my house under the HOA's rules for unpaid fines. It was all ready to go when the arrests happened. My hands shook as I read the papers. My own uncle had tried to steal my home. I added that evidence to the case file. The state opened a second round of charges. Fraud, forgery, attempted theft. My uncle was rearrested. I should have felt satisfied. I didn't. All I could think about was the Thanksgiving dinners, the family birthdays, the times he'd laughed with me. He had betrayed me worse than any stranger ever could. I stood in court as they read the new charges. He wouldn't even look at me. The lawsuit against me? Dropped within a week. The judge called their claim frivolous and retaliatory. I walked out of the courthouse exhausted but free. My phone buzzed. It was a neighbor, Ms. Reed, an older widow they had tried to scam too. Her message was short. You saved us. Thank you. For the first time in months, I smiled. 2 weeks after the second arrest, I got a plain manila envelope shoved under my door. No return address. Inside were copies of emails and invoices. A note scribbled in shaky handwriting said, "You missed these. Good luck." I don't know who sent it. Maybe it was a guilty ex-board member. Maybe it was a staffer tired of the lies. What I held in my hands was undeniable proof that the HOA had not only tried to steal my house, but had systematically targeted at least 12 other residents over the past 5 years. All elderly or living alone. All falsely accused. all forced to settle by paying fines they didn't owe, under threat of foreclosure. I sent everything to the state attorney. A month later, I stood with my neighbors as police and state agents came back. There were more arrests. 2 more board members who had avoided the first sweep. An HOA lawyer. Even the HOA's so-called security consultant, who turned out to be the brother of the treasurer. The entire board was gone. The local news showed up this time. I didn't speak on camera. I didn't need to. The sight of the remaining corrupt board members being let out of their houses in handcuffs was enough. The whole neighborhood watched. Silent. Stunned. My uncle got 10 years. The others got 5 to 8. Heavy fines. Permanent bans from ever serving on a board again. During sentencing, the judge called it one of the worst cases of systematic HOA abuse ever uncovered in this state. The new management company cleaned house. Every fine I had ever been given was reversed. I got a formal apology from the State Housing Commission. I even got an offer for restitution, but I refused it. I hadn't done it for money. I did it to have peace. I still live in my house. The lawn is the same. The old oak tree still leans a little to the left. The streets are quiet again. People wave when I walk by. Even Dave, the angry neighbor, gave me a small nod the other day. At the last community meeting, the new HOA president stood up. "We owe one of our own a debt," she said. "Without him, we'd still be living under fear." They clapped. I didn't stand or wave. I just sat there, drained but whole. Last week, I got a text from my cousin. "Uncle says you ruined his life." I stared at my phone. I typed back, "No. He did that all by himself." I will never forget what they tried to do to me. But I will never forget how I fought back either. And I won.